It worked that time. That's weird. I just hit the button and said it couldn't save it, but then I didn't. I don't know what happened. Oh well. So I just got home. It's a Wednesday night. No, it's a Tuesday night. Excuse me. But I was thinking about something I've heard a lot over the years about. I've heard a lot of people say, well, it's the message that matters, right? Or even it's only the message that matters, and I don't agree with that. The message is important, but presentation is equally important. In fact, I think you could even argue that presentation might even be more important. So, when Jesus came, he had a presentation. In fact, he talked about it himself, how he didn't just come with a message, he came with signs and wonders to solidify his deity, right? It's kind of like a lot of Christian movies, I've seen my share of Christian movies, and I understand that oftentimes they can be subpar because of, production costs, and, a lot of Christian movies are not put out by major Hollywood studios, and people might say, again, well, Jeff, it's only it's the message that matters. But, I can have a great message, but if my presentation is cringe, if my presentation is poor, the message isn't going to get across. Not always. Look at us Christians. I mean, we have the truth. We have the true message. But a lot of people reject it. And it's not because the message isn't true. Why do a lot of people in the world reject the gospel? Because they don't like what they see from Christians in the church. They don't like the presentation being given to them. Presentation matters. So, no, I don't think it's just the message. And in fact, flip the coin, a lot of people buy into false religions and cults, right, because of the presentation that they're given. Now, you could argue people being brainwashed and duped and things like that, and yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. Nonetheless, the point still stands. A message only goes so far, right? Presentation is at least just as important. If we could argue whether it's more important, but I would say it's no matter what, it's at least as important as the message. Like I said, Jesus himself had a message. Jesus didn't just come preaching with words, right? He backed it up with action. Right? He backed it up with action. Now, obviously, again, that doesn't diminish the message, right? I think there's a harmony between the two, right? It's like a dance. And sometimes the message might be, might take precedence, and then sometimes it might be the presentation, and sometimes it might be 50-50. I just think that sometimes we make the mistake of thinking that, well, the presentation, that's all that matters. Just as long as we have the right message, that's all that matters. No, that's not all that matters. How we present ourselves, how we present the gospel, right? It matters. So, I just wanted to put that out there that, when I go out into the world, in fact, I would even say every morning when I say my morning prayers and I go out into the world, I'm thinking mostly about how I present myself, right? I know the message, I've got the words. How am I presenting myself to the world? Am I presenting myself, graciously with, empathy and kindness and compassion? Obviously, sometimes I succeed, sometimes I fail, But yeah, it's when I wake up every morning, I think about, okay, I need to present myself as best as possible. How can I present myself as Christ-like, right? Because once I got that foot in the door, then yeah, the message comes into play, and I can share the gospel with somebody, But if I'm acting a fool, they're not going to listen to anything I have to say, right? So message matters, presentation matters too. God bless everyone.